The beep was quiet, almost polite, but it sliced through the sterile air of the clinic like a gunshot. Dr. Arisara Vanison stared at the small, impassive screen of the payment terminal. Declined. For a moment, the word didn't register. She was here at the Serenity Birthing Center, listening to the strong, steady heartbeat of her miracle baby just moments ago. This appointment was a milestone, a celebration, but that single cold word on a tiny screen was the first tremor of an earthquake that would shatter her world, revealing that the foundation of her marriage was built on a sinkhole of deceit funded by a betrayal so luxurious and precise it wore a crown and ticked on another woman's wrist. The air in Dr. Anya Sharma's office was a carefully curated blend of calm, soft lavender, filtered light, and the hushed, reassuring hum of medical equipment. For Dr. Arisara Vanison, a pediatrician herself, the environment was familiar, yet today it felt sacred. She lay on the examination table, a thin paper sheet. Her only barrier against the world, the cool ultrasound gel on her swollen belly, a stark contrast to the warmth blooming in her chest. On the large monitor angled towards her, a tiny, thrumming shape pulsed with life. Thump, 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 thump. The sound, amplified by the Doppler, was the most beautiful music Arizara had ever heard. 155 beats per minute. Absolutely perfect, Dr. Sharma said, her voice a warm blanket. She pointed a pen at the screen. There's the spine like a perfect little string of pearls. And those are the kidneys already hard at work. Tears pricked the corners of Arisara's eyes. At 38, after 2 gut-wrenching miscarriages and a grueling round of IVF, this baby wasn't just a child. She was a testament to hope, a miracle woven from science and sheer stubborn will. Her baby girl. She's perfect, Arisara whispered, a hand fluttering instinctively to her belly. She is, Dr. Sharma agreed, smiling. And so are you. Blood pressure is excellent, weight gain is right on track. Everything is progressing beautifully for your 24-week checkup. Arisara's husband, Theron Hayes, should have been here. He was supposed to be squeezing her hand, his handsome face lit with the same awe that filled her. But a last-minute crisis had erupted at his architecture firm, Hayes & Sterling. A major investor for the new waterfront development project was in town unexpectedly. "I'm so sorry, Ari," his text had read, an hour ago, littered with sad face emojis. "I'm gutted. I was dying to see our little girl. I'll make it up to you tonight, I promise. Dinner anywhere you want. Spoil you rotten." She'd been disappointed, of course, but she understood. Theron was passionate and driven, a rising star in Boston's competitive architecture scene. His ambition was part of what she loved about him. He was building an empire for them, for their daughter. A last-minute meeting with a key investor was, in the grand scheme of things, a necessary sacrifice. She had texted back a photo of the ultrasound screen with the caption, "Your daughter says hi, and that you owe her a pony." He'd replied instantly, "She can have a whole stable." Smiling at the memory, Arisara wiped the gel from her stomach and sat up. The world felt bright, solid, secure. The anxieties that had plagued the first trimester had melted away, replaced by a deep, abiding certainty. She and Theron were entering the golden chapter of their lives. "All right, Dr. Vanison," Dr. Sharma said, closing her file. "Let's get you scheduled for your glucose tolerance test in 4 weeks. You can settle the co-payment with Brenda at the front desk." "Thank you, Anya, for everything." "It's my privilege, Ari. Now go home and put your feet up." Arisara floated out of the examination room and towards the elegant, wood-paneled reception area. The Serenity Birthing Center catered to Boston's elite, and the atmosphere was more luxury spa than clinic. Brenda, the practice manager, greeted her with a warm, familiar smile. "Wasn't that just the best sound you've ever heard?" Brenda asked, her eyes twinkling. "Nothing even comes close," Arisara beamed. "I'm ready to settle up." Brenda tapped a few keys on her keyboard. "Okay, so today's consultation and detailed ultrasound comes to a copay of $350. Of course." Arisara opened her Chanel tote, the one Theron had bought her for their 5th anniversary, and pulled out her wallet. She bypassed her own cards, reaching instead for the sleek black Amex Centurion card that bore Theron's name. It was their designated family card, linked to his primary account, used for all major household and now baby-related expenses. It was a symbol of their partnership, their shared life. Using it felt right, a way of including him in this milestone he'd been forced to miss. She handed the card to Brenda, her mind already drifting to the evening. Maybe they'd go to Contessa, the Italian place, atop the Newberry, with glittering views of the city. She deserved a little pampering. Brenda swiped the card. The machine was silent for a moment too long. A small, anxious flutter began in Arisara's chest. Brenda's smile tightened, almost imperceptibly, as she swiped it again. This time, the machine responded. A single, quiet beep. On the small screen, in stark red letters, was the word Arisara had seen, but not processed, moments before. A word that had no place in her perfect, meticulously planned world. Declined. Brenda's professionalism was flawless, but a flicker of something pity embarrassment crossed her face before she could mask it. "Oh dear. It seems there's an issue with the card, Dr. Vanison. Sometimes the chip reader can be a bit finicky. Do you have another card you'd like to try?" The warmth in Arisara's cheeks instantly morphed into a hot, prickling flush of humiliation. She was Dr. Arisara Vanison. Her husband was Theron Hayes. Their cards didn't get declined, especially not the Centurion card, the exclusive by-invitation-only black card that supposedly had no preset spending limit. That's impossible," Arisara stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "There must be a mistake. Can you try it one more time?" "Of course." Brenda ran it again, this time inserting the chip. The result was the same, a longer, more final-sounding beep. "Insufficient funds. Contact card services." Insufficient funds. The phrase was so alien, it might as well have been in another language. Theron's firm had just landed the Seaport contract, a massive career-defining project. They were more than comfortable. They were wealthy. The commission from that project alone was in the 7 figures. Insufficient funds for a $350 co-payment was not just impossible, it was ludicrous. Her mind raced, searching for a logical explanation. Fraud protection. Yes, that had to be it. A large, unusual purchase must have triggered a security freeze. Theron had been talking about buying a new mainframe server for the office. That was probably it. But the heat of shame was still coiling in her gut. She, a respected physician, was standing in the lobby of the most exclusive birthing clinic in the city, unable to pay her bill. The other women in the waiting area, with their Hermes bracelets and quiet poise, were studiously ignoring her, which was somehow worse than if they had stared. "It's fine," Arisara said, forcing a brittle smile as she fumbled for her own wallet, her fingers suddenly clumsy. He must have made a large purchase for his business. The bank probably flagged it. So silly. She handed over her own Visa card, her hand trembling slightly. The transaction went through instantly. "Approved." "There we go," Brenda said, her voice gentle. She slid the receipt and the offending black card back across the marble countertop. Arisara took them, the black card, feeling heavy and toxic in her hand. The shame was now being eclipsed by a cold, creeping dread. It felt like the first chill of a fever, a sign that something was deeply wrong within the system. She managed a tight nod, mumbled her goodbyes, and walked out of the clinic, the memory of her baby's perfect heartbeat already being drowned out by the deafening silence of a question she was terrified to ask. As she stepped out into the bright June afternoon, the city felt different. The familiar Boston skyline seemed sharp and hostile. She slid into the driver's seat of her Mercedes, her hands gripping the wheel. She looked at the black card in her hand. Theron Hayes, her husband. The man who could have a stable of ponies for their daughter. The man whose card had just been declined for insufficient funds. She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over his name. Her first instinct was to call and ask a worried query about potential bank fraud. But something stopped her. A tiny, ice-cold splinter of doubt had lodged itself in her heart. His text message, so full of love and promises, now seemed performative. The image of his handsome, smiling face wavered in her mind, and for the first time in their 7 years together, she found herself wondering what lay behind the perfect facade. Instead of calling him, she scrolled down her contacts and pressed the icon for the American Express Centurion customer service line. As the phone began to ring, she had no idea she was not calling to solve a simple banking error, but to pull the first thread of a lie that would unravel her entire existence. Part 2. The cracks appear. The automated voice on the other end of the line was smooth and impersonal, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing inside Arisara. After navigating a labyrinth of prompts, for billing inquiries, press 1. For lost or stolen cards, press 2. She was finally connected to a human being. Thank you for calling Centurion Card Services. My name is David. For whom do I have the pleasure of speaking with today? My name is Dr. Arisara Vanison. I'm an authorized user on the account of my husband, Theron Hayes. She recited the account number, her voice steadier than she felt. Thank you, Dr. Vanison. For security purposes, can you please verify the 4-digit code you use for phone inquiries and the billing zip code? Arisara provided the information. It was the year they met. 0915. So sentimental. So Theron. Perfect, thank you for verifying, David said cheerfully. How can I assist you today? Yes, I was just attempting to make a payment, and the card was declined. She said the words, tasting like ash. The terminal said, insufficient funds, which can't possibly be right. I was assuming it was a fraud alert. Perhaps. There was a pause filled with the soft clatter of a keyboard. Arisara held her breath, the leather of her steering wheel creaking under her grip. I do see the attempted charge for $350 at the Serenity Birthing Center at 1:15 p.m. David confirmed. And I see that it was declined. Yes. Why was that? Another pause. This one was longer, more hesitant. Ma'am, the card was not declined due to a fraud alert. The cold dread in Arisara's stomach intensified. Then why? The decline was due to the account being over its credit limit. Arisara's mind went blank. She actually laughed, a short, sharp, disbelieving sound. Over its limit. It's a mimgul. It's a Centurion card. I thought the whole point was that there is no preset limit. That's a common perception, Dr. Vanison. David said, his tone shifting into a carefully scripted explanation. While there is no preset limit, the account does have a dynamic maximum based on spending patterns, payment history, and assets. The account has unfortunately exceeded that dynamic limit. This made no sense. Exceeded it? With what? What could he possibly have purchased? She asked, a note of command creeping into her voice. She was used to getting answers. I can certainly review the most recent major transactions for you, David offered. I see a series of charges from yesterday and today. Let me see. There are several charges at high-end boutiques, a significant charge at the Loro boutique on Newbury Street yesterday afternoon, but the largest recent transaction was posted this morning. What was it, she asked, her knuckles white. David cleared his throat. It was a single transaction made at 10:45 a.m. today at a jeweler, specifically at the Rolex boutique on Newbury Street. Time seemed to slow down. The honk of a distant taxi, the murmur of pedestrians on the sidewalk, it all faded into a dull roar. A Rolex. Theron had been wanting one, a classic submariner. He'd pointed it out in a magazine last month, calling it a Grail watch. He must have done it, finally pulled the trigger as a celebration for the seaport contract. It was an extravagant, slightly reckless purchase, but it was understandable. A trophy for a massive career victory. The relief was so potent, it made her feel lightheaded. Of course. That was it. He'd bought himself the watch he'd been dreaming of. He'd maxed out the card in a moment of celebratory madness. It was irresponsible, especially without talking to her first, but it wasn't sinister. Okay. Arisara breathed, the knot in her chest loosening. Okay, I see. Can you tell me the amount of the purchase? Certainly. The total charge was for $47,550. Arisara winced. That was more than the submariner he'd pointed out. He must have gone for a more premium model. A day date, perhaps. It was an obscene amount of money to spend on a watch, but Theron always did have a taste for the finer things. It was part of his charm. I see, she said, her voice still a little shaky. Well, that certainly explains it. Thank you for your help, David. You're very welcome, Dr. Vanessine. Would you like me to connect you to our payments department to settle the balance? No, that's all right. My husband will handle it. Thank you. She ended the call, her body slumping against the car seat. The humiliation and fear began to recede, replaced by a simmering annoyance. He really should have told her. Dropping nearly $50,000 was a joint decision, not an impulse buy. She'd have a word with him tonight over that fancy dinner he'd promised her. She started the car and pulled into traffic, the annoyance already softening. She pictured his face when he'd present the watch to her, his little boy grin that always melted her. He'd probably been planning to surprise her with the news tonight. She could forgive him. They were a team. Her phone buzzed. It was her younger sister, Camila. She answered via the car's Bluetooth. Hey, you? Camila's cheerful voice filled the car. How'd it go? Is my little niece still kicking up a storm? She's perfect, Len. Strong heartbeat, growing right on schedule. I knew it. So is Theron, walking on air. Arisara hesitated for a fraction of a second. He couldn't make it. Last-minute investor meeting. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Camilla, a sharp-witted divorce attorney, had always been more skeptical of Theron's polished charm than Arisara was. She'd once called him too smooth to be true, a comment that had sparked a rare argument between the sisters. Oh, Camilla said, her voice carefully neutral. Again. That's the third appointment he's missed. Ari. It was important, Camilla. The main investor for the Seaport project. Arisara's tone was defensive. You know how critical this is for him? I know. I just think seeing his daughter's heartbeat is pretty critical too, Camilla countered gently. Anyway, enough of that. Are we still on for our prenatal yoga tomorrow? Wouldn't miss it. Great. Talk to you then. Love you too. The call ended, but Camilla's words lingered in the air. The third appointment he's missed. It was true. There had always been a plausible, important reason: a site emergency, a client dinner that ran late, a sudden trip to meet with city planners. Arisara had always accepted them, proud of his dedication. But now, seen through the lens of Camilla's skepticism, they formed a pattern. She shook her head, trying to dispel the thought. She was being paranoid because of a stupid credit card issue. When she got home, to their elegant brownstone in Beacon Hill, she tried to reclaim the joy of the morning. She placed the latest ultrasound picture on the marble mantelpiece, right next to a smiling photo of her and Theron on their wedding day in Tuscany. They looked so happy, so full of promise. She decided to take a bath to soak away the lingering stress of the day. As she was getting undressed in their master bedroom, her phone chimed with a notification. It was from Instagram. Crystal.Nguyen tagged you in a photo. Arisara frowned. Crystal Nguyen, the name sounded vaguely familiar. She was one of the junior interns at Theron's firm. A pretty ambitious girl in her mid-20s. Why would she be tagging her? They'd met once briefly at the company holiday party. Curiosity piqued, she tapped the notification. The photo loaded, and for a long moment, Arisara's brain refused to process what she was seeing. It was a selfie taken from a high angle. Crystal Nguyen, her face a mask of delighted surprise, was in the foreground. In the background, slightly out of focus, but still unmistakable, was the sleek, modern interior of the Rolex boutique on Newbury Street. Crystal's left wrist was front and center, held up towards the camera, and on that wrist was a brand new watch. It wasn't a man's Submariner or a day date. It was a women's Rolex. A lady date, just in gleaming Everose gold, its bezel and dial paved with a blinding constellation of diamonds. It was a watch that screamed opulence, a piece that cost far, far more than $47,550. This was a six-figure statement. Arisara's blood ran cold. It had to be a coincidence. A terrible, bizarre coincidence. Crystal must have a wealthy boyfriend. Or family money. Then she read the caption. Some girls get flowers. I get time. A just because surprise from the most incredible man on the planet. Feeling like the luckiest girl in the world. Rolex. Date just blessed. Best boyfriend ever. And then the final devastating blow. Underneath the caption was a tag. Not a tag on the photo itself, but a tag in the text. A name. It wasn't Arisara's name. It was Theron's. Theron Hayes Arch. But that wasn't the tag that had notified her. She scrolled down to the comments, her finger trembling so violently she could barely control it. There were dozens of comments from Crystal's friends. OMG, he's a keeper. You deserve it. And nestled among them was a comment from a different account, one Arisara didn't recognize. An account named Thays Private. The profile picture was black. The comment was simple. You're worth every second. And next to that comment was another tag. Dr. Ari Vanna. It was a deliberate surgical strike, a missile aimed directly at her heart. Crystal hadn't tagged her in the photo itself. That would have been too obvious. She or Theron, using a private account, had tagged her in a comment, ensuring she would see it, a cruel digital whisper in the dark. The phone slipped from Arisara's numb fingers and clattered onto the hardwood floor. The room began to spin. The morning's events rearranged themselves in her mind, snapping into a new, horrific alignment. The declined card, the investor meeting, the $47,550 charge, a deposit clearly, not the full price. The missed appointments, the late nights at the office. It wasn't a watch for him. It was a watch for her. He hadn't been in a meeting with an investor. He had been on Newbury Street, anointing his mistress with a gift more valuable than a car, a gift paid for from their shared finances, a gift that had pushed their account over the edge and left his pregnant wife humiliated at her birthing clinic. The warmth of the bath she'd been about to take was forgotten. A chilling Arctic cold seeped into her bones. She sank to the floor, her back against the bed, and wrapped her arms around her stomach, around the innocent life that was tethered to this monstrous lie. The steady, beautiful thump-thump of her daughter's heartbeat was now a frantic counterpoint to the shattering of her own. Theron would be home soon, expecting to see his loving, adoring wife. He would walk in, with his charming smile and his plausible lies, ready to whisk her off to dinner to make it up to her. But the woman he had left this morning no longer existed. In her place was someone else, a stranger, forged in the icy fire of betrayal. And she was sitting in the ruins of her life, holding a shard of truth so sharp it threatened to bleed her dry. For a few fleeting hours, a fragile sense of relief settled over Arisara. The phone call with American Express had provided a logical, if infuriating, explanation for the chaos at the clinic. Theron had bought a Rolex. It was an obnoxious, impulsive celebration for his new contract, a conversation they absolutely needed to have about their finances, but it was a solvable problem. It was a friction point within their marriage, not a fracture of its foundation. The acute humiliation she'd felt at the clinic began to fade, replaced by a more familiar, manageable annoyance. Driving home to their elegant Beacon Hill brownstone, she tried to consciously restore the day's earlier joy. She looked at the ultrasound photo on her phone, the perfect tiny profile of her daughter, a reminder of what truly mattered. This silly extravagance of his didn't change their shared future. It was just a testament to his sometimes maddening impulsiveness. She would scold him, he would flash his charming, apologetic grin, and they would move on. The world, which had tilted so dangerously, was steadying itself. After placing the ultrasound picture on the mantelpiece, she went upstairs to run a bath to soak away the last vestiges of stress. As she undressed, her phone chimed with an Instagram notification. Crystal.N Nguyen tagged you in a photo. Arisara frowned. Crystal Nguyen. The name was vaguely familiar, a pretty young intern from Theron's firm she had met once at a holiday party. Curious, she tapped the notification. What loaded on her screen was not a group photo, but a digital execution. It was a tightly framed selfie of Crystal, her face a mask of delighted surprise. The background was the unmistakable cream and gold interior of the Rolex boutique on Newbury Street. But Arisara's eyes were locked on Crystal's wrist, held front and center for the world to see. On it was not the rugged steel watch Theron had wanted for himself, but an ostentatious women's Rolex lady date just in gleaming ever-rose gold, its bezel and dial paved with a blinding field of diamonds. It was a coronation jewel, a piece whose value far exceeded the charge that had crippled their account. A cold wave of nausea washed over Arisara as she read the caption. Some girls get flowers. I get time. A just because surprise from the most incredible man on the planet, feeling like the luckiest girl in the world. Dash. Rolex date just blessed even then. A desperate, frantic part of her mind screamed coincidence. But she knew with a sickening certainty what she would find in the comments section. Her finger, now trembling violently, scrolled down past the chorus of congratulatory emojis from Crystal's friends. And there it was, a comment from a stark, anonymous account at Thay's Private. The profile picture was a black void. The comment was 5 words, a dagger twisting in an open wound. You're worth every second. Next to it was the tag, a stiletto in the dark, buried where it was guaranteed to be seen by its intended target, but not by a casual observer. At Dr. Ari Vanna. The phone slipped from her numb fingers. The room tilted violently as the day's events reassembled themselves into a new, horrific truth. The declined card wasn't an anomaly. It was a consequence. The investor meeting was an alibi. The charge was only a deposit. He hadn't just cheated. He had orchestrated a cruel public spectacle of his betrayal, tagging her as a witness to her own humiliation. A key turned in the front door, downstairs. Theron was home. A primal urge to scream, to confront, to shatter the calm with the force of her pain rose within her. But something colder and sharper took its place. An outburst was what he'd expect. He would call her hormonal, hysterical, crazy. He would use her pain to gaslight her. In that instant, the heartbroken wife receded, and a cool, methodical detective took her place. She needed more than a social media post. She needed an arsenal. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she composed herself. When Theron entered the bedroom, she was calmly pretending to search for an earring. "Hey, you," he said, his voice rich with feigned success. "Sorry I'm late. The meeting was a marathon, but we got it done." He moved to hug her, and she allowed the embrace, her body rigid against his. He was a stranger. "That's wonderful, honey," she managed, pulling away. He sensed the shift. "Everything okay? How was our girl?" "Perfect," Arizaras said, meeting his gaze. "Strong heartbeat." "That's my girl," he beamed. "Now about tonight. I promise to spoil you." Contessa. Oh, while the audacity of offering her a restaurant where he'd likely taken his mistress was breathtaking. She needed him out of her way. "You know," she said, letting weariness enter her voice, "I'm just exhausted. Can we just stay and order a pizza?" He feigned loving concern. "Of course, honey. Whatever you want. I'll go order. You get comfortable." The moment his footsteps faded down the stairs, Arisara retrieved his briefcase and pulled out the MacBook Pro. The password screen stared back at her. She tried their anniversary, her birthday, their dog's name. Incorrect. 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 Her mind raced. What was important to him now? The private account, the cruel comment. "You're worth every second." Could he be that arrogant? Her fingers trembled as she typed. "Worth every second." The password box vanished. The desktop wallpaper appeared a high-resolution portrait of Crystal laughing on a yacht. It was a gut punch, confirming this was no mere fling. It was his private world. Ignoring the pain, Arisara opened his email client. Tucked beneath his work account was one she'd never seen. thayes@private@gmail.com. The inbox was a digital roadmap of his secret life hotel confirmations for his business trips, e-receipts for Chanel and Cartier, a meticulously documented betrayal. Then she found the smoking gun. An email from the Rolex boutique. "Dear Mr. Hayes, thank you for your purchase. We have processed the initial deposit of $47,050 for the Rolex Lady Just model 279458 RBR. The remaining balance of $85,000 is due upon collection. As requested, the custom engraving on the caseback reads, My Forever TH. We look forward to seeing you and Ms. Nguyen for the final fitting. My Forever." The words mocked her from the screen. This wasn't just infidelity, it was a declaration of a new life funded by their old one. This email was the weapon she needed. As she was forwarding it to a secret account, she'd created moments before on her phone, her cursor hovered over a folder on his desktop. The label was Innocuous Projects Finances. A cold, certain instinct made her click it. It wasn't blueprints. It was a labyrinth of spreadsheets. Her analytical mind, used to medical charts, struggled with the financial jargon. But the narrative was horrifyingly clear. One spreadsheet detailed a second mortgage on their brownstone, a property largely paid for with her family's money. Another outlined a massive business loan, collateralized by their joint investment portfolio, which held her entire inheritance. The final devastating truth slammed into her. This was never just about sex or a Rolex. He was committing fraud on a massive scale. He was using her home, and her inheritance as a secret slush fund to finance his affair and prop up his failing business ventures. The successful architect was a con man, and she, his loving pregnant wife, was his primary mark. Footsteps. He was coming back. With frantic precision, Arisara dragged the entire finance folder into an email draft and hit send. She deleted the evidence of her actions from the computer, closed the laptop, and slid it back into the briefcase just as Theron re-entered the room. "Pizza's on the way," he said, smiling his easy, handsome lie. Feeling any better, Arisara stood and met his gaze. The man before her was a stranger, a thief who had mistaken her love for weakness. The grief had been burned away, replaced by a terrifying, crystalline resolve. "Much better," she said, her smile a perfect, chilling imitation of normalcy. He thought he was in control, that she was his tired, trusting wife. He had no idea that in the time it took to order a pizza, she had become the sole custodian of his destruction. The next 24 hours were an exercise in chilling deception. Arisara moved through her life with a detached, methodical calm that terrified her. She ate pizza with the man who was systematically destroying her discussing nursery colors, while her mind catalogued his crimes. She feigned sleep beside him, the warmth of his body, a repulsive reminder of the coldness of his betrayal. Every loving word he uttered, every casual touch, was fuel for the icy rage solidifying in her heart. This was not grief. It was the slow, meticulous preparation for war. The following morning, she kissed him goodbye with a tenderness that was her finest performance yet. Instead of heading to her prenatal yoga class, she drove to the glass and steel tower housing Lockwood, Thorne and Associates. Her sister Camilla was waiting in a sterile conference room. The moment Arisara walked in, the soft, sisterly concern vanished from Camilla's eyes, replaced by the sharp, predatory focus of a top-tier litigator. "Show me," Camilla said, her voice devoid of pleasantries. On the large monitor, Arisara laid out the digital wreckage of her marriage. She began with the Instagram post, crystal radiant with her new Rolex. Then came the email from the jeweler, confirming the six-figure price tag and the sickeningly intimate engraving, "My Forever TH." She followed with the torrent of emails she had forwarded to herself, hotel confirmations for business trips, receipts for designer gifts, and finally the folder that changed everything: asset leverage strategy. As the spreadsheets filled the screen, Camilla's expression hardened into a grim mask. She scanned the numbers, her silence more damning than any scream. After a moment, she picked up her phone. "Marcus, I need you in conference room 3. Now, bring your glasses." Marcus Thorne, the firm's head forensic accountant, was a quiet, unassuming man whose gentle demeanor belied a mind that could track a single dollar through a hurricane of financial chaos. He looked at the spreadsheets Arisara had found, and a low whistle escaped his lips. "This is audacious," he murmured. his eyes darting between columns. He pointed to a line item. Second mortgage on the Beacon Hill brownstone, underwritten by Boston First Mercantile. Dr. Vanison, this deed requires 2 signatures. I never signed anything, Arisara whispered, her blood running cold. Then he forged your signature, Camilla stated flatly. The air in the room grew heavy. This just crossed the line from a divorce into a felony. Marcus continued his grim assessment. It gets worse. Your joint investment portfolio, the one containing your inheritance, he's used it as collateral to secure a multi-million-dollar high-risk loan. He's been paying the interest on that loan with capital from the forged mortgage and paying for his extracurriculars with funds from his business accounts. It's a classic shell game, a personal Ponzi scheme. He's robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you, I'm afraid, are Peter. How much? Arisara's voice was barely audible. How much has he taken? Marcus circled a number on his notepad. Based on these documents, he has leveraged you, your home, and your inheritance for approximately $4.2 million. And that's only what we can see here. He was using your family's wealth as his personal emergency fund to keep his sinking ship afloat. The figure was so immense, it felt abstract, but the betrayal was a physical weight pressing down on her chest, stealing her breath. She had been married to a stranger, a master manipulator who saw her and their unborn child not as his family, but as assets to be liquidated. Camilla stood up, her movements sharp and decisive. The time for discovery was over. The time for action had begun. Okay, here is our counterattack. It will be swift and it will be brutal. First, I'm calling Judge Albright. With this evidence of forgery, I can get an emergency ex parte hearing this afternoon to freeze every single asset you share. Bank accounts, properties, credit cards, everything. Theron won't know what hit him until it's already done. She then turned to Arisara, her lawyer's gaze softening with a flicker of sisterly empathy. Now for your part. This will be hard, Ari, but it's the most critical first move. You need to go to your bank, open a new account in your name only, and transfer exactly half of the liquid funds from your main joint account into it. Not a penny more. It has to be legally defensible. This action will trigger a bank alert on his phone. It will be the first shot fired. While he is reeling from that, the judge's order will land, cutting him off completely. Walking into the familiar bank branch felt like stepping into a past life. The friendly teller who had cooed over Arisara's baby bump just weeks ago asked, "How's Mr. Hayes? He's great." Arisara replied the lie, smooth and practiced. With trembling hands, she signed the paperwork, creating a new solitary financial identity. Then, on the teller's tablet, she initiated the transfer. The moment she pressed confirm, a profound sense of finality washed over her. She had just detonated the bomb. Back in the silent brownstone, which now felt more like a museum of a dead marriage, her phone began to buzz. It was Theron. The first bank alert had reached him. She ignored the call. A rapid series of texts followed. Theron R.E. Did you just move a huge amount of money from the joint account? My phone is blowing up. Theron, what is going on? Is this about the watch I was going to tell you? We can take it back. Call me, Theron Arisara. You're freaking me out. Call me now. Arisara watched the messages arrive, her heart a cold, steady drum. She began packing a bag, not his, but her own. She was leaving. She couldn't sleep another night in that house. She packed her clothes, the ultrasound photos, and the baby rattles her mother had knitted. Then the tone of the texts shifted. The charm had vanished, replaced by raw panic. Theron, a man, just showed up at my office and served me with a court order. Arisara, what the hell did you do? All our assets are frozen. Call me now. A grim satisfaction settled over her. The first and second strikes had landed precisely as planned. He was disarmed and cornered. She zipped her bag ready to walk out the door and into her new life at Camilla's. Just as she picked it up, her phone chimed with one last message. It was from an unknown number. Her breath caught in her throat. This is Crystal Nguyen. I think we need to talk. Arisara stared at the screen. The Mistress, the final unpredictable piece on the board. Her first instinct was to block the number to erase her, but Camilla's voice echoed in her mind. Gather data. Every piece is a weapon. With a deep, steadying breath, she typed a simple, two-word reply that would change everything. Where and when? The meeting place was a nondescript coffee shop in Somerville, a world away from the gilded cage Arisara had escaped. The anonymity was the point. She sat in a back corner booth, nursing a chamomile tea, her mind a fortress built on her lawyer sister's final instruction. You are not a wife scorned. You are a scientist on a fact-finding mission. Gather data. Crystal Nguyen arrived looking nothing like her luminous Instagram persona. Stripped of the filters and designer backdrops, she was just a terrified 25-year-old in jeans and a sweater. The only remnant of her fantasy life was the diamond-paved Rolex on her wrist, an object so opulent it looked like a shackle in the dreary cafe. She slid into the booth, avoiding Arisara's eyes. "Thank you for meeting me," Crystal mumbled. "Look, I know what you think, but he told me your marriage was over. A business arrangement. He said you were cold." She hesitated, then delivered the deepest cut. "He said you didn't really want the baby, that it was just something to tick off a list." Each lie was a poisoned dart aimed at Arisara's most vulnerable heartaches. But she held her composure, a mask of clinical detachment. The pain was data. The cruelty was data. She let the silence hang for a beat before slicing through it. "Why did you text me, Crystal?" The direct question rattled the younger woman. "Because it's all gone crazy," she stammered, her defensiveness crumbling into fear. His cards stopped working. He called me screaming, asking what I'd bought. Then he went quiet for hours. When he called back, he was frantic. He said, "You'd frozen him out, that we needed to be a united front." "And do you still wish to be a united front with Theron?" Arisara asked, her voice dangerously soft. Crystal finally looked up, her eyes wide with panic. "He's not the man I thought he was. He's scary now. He keeps talking about his contingency plan. He told me he was going to leave you after the baby was born anyway." She took a shaky breath, revealing the most critical piece of data. "He said it would be easier to get favorable custody terms if he painted you as the unstable one who destroyed the family while pregnant." There it was, the monstrous truth. This was never just an affair. It was a premeditated campaign to ruin her, to steal not only her money, but her child. Arisara saw the full picture. Theron was a predator, and Crystal was merely a disposable tool he had used. It was time to pivot from scientist to strategist. "Theron is in more trouble than you can imagine," Arisara said, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "This isn't about infidelity. This is about felony fraud, forgery. My lawyers are building a case that will interest the district attorney." Crystal paled. "That's between you and him." "Is it?" Arisara countered, her gaze dropping pointedly to the Rolex. "That watch is stolen property, Crystal. Purchased with funds from a fraudulent loan. Every gift he gave you makes you a recipient of stolen assets. At best, you'll be forced to give it all back in a very public, humiliating lawsuit. At worst, you could be considered an accessory to his crimes. The reality of her situation dawned on Crystal's face. "I didn't know, I swear." "I believe you," Arisara said, with chilling sincerity. "So I'm offering you a choice. Option A, you stick with Theron. My legal team will subpoena you, depose you, and dismantle you on the stand. We will claw back every dollar. Option B, you cooperate with me. You provide a sworn affidavit detailing everything, the gifts, the conversations, the financial plans. You become our witness, and in return, my lawyer grants you immunity from the civil suit. You walk away clean." Arisara leaned forward. "But there's a condition. Your cooperation begins now as a show of good faith. You will turn over the most significant assets immediately, starting with the watch." She extended her hand, palm up on the scarred tabletop. A silent, non-negotiable demand. Crystal stared from Arisara's unwavering eyes to the glittering lie on her wrist. The Rolex engraved with "My Forever TH" felt like a lead weight. Her dream was a sham, built on the ruins of another woman's life. With trembling fingers, she fumbled with the clasp and slid the heavy watch from her arm. The pale, naked skin underneath looked like a fresh wound. She pushed it across the table. The Rolex came to a stop in front of Arisara. The ultimate symbol of betrayal had just become Exhibit A. It was leverage. It was justice. Arisara closed her hand over the cold, heavy gold. "You made the right choice," she said, her voice devoid of triumph. She stood placing a bill on the table. "A lawyer will be in touch with you. Do not contact Theron. If he contacts you, save everything. From this moment, we have never spoken." Without looking back, Arisara Vanison walked out of the cafe, the weapon that would guarantee her victory nestled safely in her purse. She had left Crystal to mourn a fantasy while she marched forward to reclaim her reality. The final confrontation was a sterile execution in the main conference room of Lockwood Thorne and Associates. Arisara entered with a placid resolve, her pregnancy a quiet testament to the future she was fighting for. She sat beside her sister Camilla and placed a single heavy object on the polished mahogany table, the diamond-paved Rolex. It glittered under the recessed lighting, a ticking time bomb. When Theron walked in, he was a ghost. His suit hung off his gaunt frame, and his usual charm had curdled into a venomous, desperate anger. He stared at Arisara, then at the watch, his face a mask of disbelief. His lawyer, Stan Grossman, began with bluster. "What is this ambush? You froze my client's assets without due process. We demand you unfreeze them, or we will countersue for damages." Camilla offered a thin, dangerous smile. "Please do, Stan. Our evidence includes the second mortgage on my sister's home, secured with her forged signature, and the $2.7 million business loan he collateralized with her personal inheritance." The judge found it quite compelling. "You went through my computer," Theron hissed, staring directly at Arisara. "My own wife." The woman you were robbing. Arisara's voice was quiet, but cut through the tension. "The mother of the child you planned to frame as unstable to gain custody. Yes, that woman went through your computer." "These are baseless accusations," Grossman began, but Camilla cut him off, sliding a document across the table. "Then explain this," Camilla said. "A sworn affidavit from Ms. Crystal Nguyen. It details your client's affair, his lies, and his calculated plan to abandon his family. She also provides an itemized list of gifts purchased with stolen funds." Camilla nudged the Rolex an inch forward. "Ms. Nguyen turned this over voluntarily in exchange for immunity. She was remarkably cooperative. The final betrayal shattered what little composure Theron had left. He was utterly alone. He slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. "What do you want, Ari?" he whispered, his voice broken. Camilla answered for her. "You will sign over the brownstone to Arisara. The fraudulent mortgage will be paid from your share of the liquidated portfolio, and the remainder of her inheritance will be returned to her sole control. You will cede all claims." She paused, letting the words land before delivering the final blow. "Furthermore, you will sign away all parental rights to the child. Arisara will be the sole legal guardian. Your name will not be on the birth certificate. You will have no contact, ever." "No," Theron breathed, shaking his head. "You can't. She's my daughter. She stopped being your daughter when you chose a Rolex over her heartbeat." Arisara stated, her voice trembling but her gaze unwavering. "She stopped being your daughter when you planned to use her as a pawn. I will protect her from you." "This is extortion," Grossman blustered weakly. "No," Stan Camilla countered coldly. "This is the settlement that keeps your client out of prison for felony fraud. You have 1 hour to accept, or my next call is to the district attorney. Your choice." The silence was absolute. Theron stared at the glossy table, at the reflection of a ruined man. His castle of cards had collapsed. With a trembling hand, he picked up the pen and signed away his home, his stolen fortune, and his child. He then walked out of the room, a hollow man with nothing left but his debts. Arisara stood, her hand resting on her belly. It was over. She felt not triumph, but a vast, quiet relief. She picked up the Rolex, its weight significant in her hand, and looked at Camilla, tears of gratitude finally welling. "What do I do with this?" Camilla smiled, her loyally mask dissolving into sisterly warmth. "You sell it, and you use the money to start the most impressive college fund a little girl has ever had." 3 months later, Dr. Arisara Vanison gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl. She named her Aurora for the dawn, for the new beginning she represented. Standing in her own home, the fraudulent mortgage cleared and the title solely in her name, she held her daughter and looked out at the Boston skyline. The world that had shattered had been rebuilt stronger and on a foundation of truth. Theron was a ghost, having reportedly left the country after his firm collapsed under scandal and debt. Crystal had disappeared, granted her quiet exit to start over. For Arisara, the past was a scar, but the future was a brilliant, sunlit path she would walk with her daughter. Her greatest treasure wasn't a watch or a house, but the fierce, resilient love that had seen her through the fire. If Arisara's story of betrayal, strength, and ultimate reclamation resonated with you, please give this video a like to show your support. So many people face hidden battles in their relationships, and stories like this remind us of the incredible power of truth and resilience. Share this video with someone who might need to hear a story of survival and rebirth. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more real-life dramas that explore the complexities of the human heart. What would you have done in Arisara's position? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for listening.